Welcome to the Infinite and Beyond, the MIT Alumni Show. I'm your trusted host, Rob Kalwarowski, MIT Class of 2010, world-renowned executive coach, author, and speaker. Each week, we are sharing the stories with our friends and classmates, fellow MIT alumni who've taken action to shape the world. We'll share what we've learned, top strategies, and bring our community together to help everyone achieve our goals. No, this show is not officially affiliated with MIT, so any views expressed on this show are of the host and guest only. This show is designed to build a community that trusts, connects, and shares with each other so we can all take action towards a better world. Let's get rolling. Welcome to the Infinite and Beyond MIT Alumni Show. And as always, we have a special guest with us. We have Alex Murphy, of course, another 2010, and he is the leader of the neurodegeneration strategy at Novartis. Alex, thanks for joining us on the show.
Hey, thanks, Rob. Great to be here. Really looking forward to talking with you.
Amazing. Thanks for joining us. And of course, you're another 2010. And so what we always love to start off the show with is, Alex, can you tell us what's your journey been like since you graduated?
Yeah, absolutely. So professionally, after MIT, I finished my PhD in neurobiology at Harvard, worked on understanding how the two hemispheres of the brain connect together during normal brain development, and then got really excited about when things go wrong and diseases result. Can you do something about it? Can you intervene with a therapeutic? Can you rewire in a different way? Got more and more interested about the business side of things. Classic move from academia to consulting, spent about 5-6 years at McKinsey working with pharmaceutical companies. And then from there, got really excited to actually dive deep into drug development, drug discovery. And so now have been in the pharma side for a few years now, working at Novartis now, like you said, on neurodegeneration. So work on Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and Huntington's and in ALS. Unbelievably devastating diseases, intellectually very interesting to work on, but just from an unmet need and the impact they have on families and patients themselves, it's been incredibly rewarding. Personally, I, after PhD, moved to New York, met my now wife. We traveled the world together, I think 25, 26 countries in the few years before having kids. We had a COVID wedding. So originally it was going to be a large wedding with many people. At the time, we had no idea how long it would last. So we scrambled last minute and did a really small family ceremony, bought a house and moved out to the suburbs. I never thought I would be a suburb person so early in life, but have enjoyed moving from the city and now living the suburban life and talking to neighbors about grass and yard work and all that kind of stuff. And then now we have two young kids. We have a 2.5-year-old son, Hudson, and our second child, Harper, daughter, was born in October. So she's about 5 months. So yeah, it's been quite
Amazing.
a journey professionally and personally, but have enjoyed it immensely. Hard to believe it's been almost 15 years since graduating in 2010.
It definitely doesn't feel that long. And I mean, it's funny because it seems like almost everybody we've had on the show so far has done some extensive traveling. And so, Alex, I'd love to ask you, what were some of your favorite countries and or moments that you had on that trip?
Yes. So I think my favorite place in the world has been South Africa. I've been a
Yeah.
few times. The just natural beauty of the country to me is just unbelievably stunning. That there are many places like this, I guess, to some degree, but the fact that you can just have such diverse topography ranging from more mountains and the vineyards and the Stellenbosch region to obviously Cape Town and Table Mountain and overlooking the Pacific Ocean to going to on safaris and Kruger and all of the wildlife there. So it just is it's such a beautiful, just naturally gorgeous country. And so I've kind of really learned, especially having lived in New York and Boston for so long, that I absolutely love living in cities, but being able to escape and really be in around nature and relax in that way is just amazing. And yeah, it's just such a stunningly beautiful place.
So cool. I gotta that's on the list. I had another person tell me she and her family did a safari out in South Africa. I think it was in January. Anyways, she was like, it was incredible. So I got to get down there too.
Yeah, you do. Couldn't recommend it more highly. It's so interesting, and we've done safaris in a few different places, and that's also it's interesting how it can be different in different places. All absolutely worth doing.
Amazing. Alex, I do want to ask you a little bit about the brain hemispheres and how they connect. And it's something, of course, I'm not all, maybe not all the listeners know, but I've struggled with mental health, and I guess I still do. I'm still under treatment. But one of the therapy modalities that worked really well for me was EMDR. And so eye movement desensitization reprogramming, something like that. Anyways, and the fundamental part of that therapy is about bilateral stimulation. And so either that's moving your eyes back and forth horizontally, or it's tapping on either side of your body, whether it's your shoulders or your legs. Can you tell us a little bit about brain hemispheres?
Yeah. So, the brain is just such an amazingly complex system. It's just so unbelievably complicated and interesting. And it feels like the more we know, the more we realize we don't know how it truly works. And there's so many levels to this. There's the very beginning of development of from genetics and how we're hardwired and how evolution has guided things over time. What's the general structure of the brain? How might it first start off? And then there's all of the fine tuning along the way as we experience and see the world and interact with the world, and there are all of these refinements, and all along the way things can go in totally different directions, both normal and abnormal, and things can just really play out in interestingly and very complex ways. I think one of the beautiful things of something that you're alluding to are these classic experiments that show that you can really rewire different parts of the brain depending on how you present stimuli. So the classic is if you give sensory deprivation to a normal person, say close the eyes for extended periods of time, and then look how the brain changes, you'll find that in the visual cortex, the part of the brain that is responding and processing visual information may instead start adopting auditory stimuli or other things and taking on sensation from other areas. And so it's just amazing how the brain is so, we call it plastic from a neuroscience perspective, how it can be so plastic and dynamic and evolve and change over time. And yeah, it's an incredibly interesting. Could go on for hours and hours and hours about the brain, but yeah, I'll pause there because it just is just so interesting.
It is actually. And so, of course, right, I'm a mechanical engineer and I didn't really know basically anything about the brain until I started needing to, in a sense of healing my trauma, and not even, and just the reprogramming and the changing and the plasticity and all these things. I mean, that's a huge percentage of what I do now with a lot of my clients. Of course, in if you have mental illness, like go to therapy, of course, right? But even changing some thoughts that are preventing us from being better at work or being better, feeling more fulfilled, or changing how we behave, it's a huge thing of what I do, but also we can take advantage of that neuroplasticity. And that's really how we can grow and change.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really is amazing how you can take even circuits in people that have been living a particular experience or have been thinking in a certain way for decades and just emphasized changes are sufficient to rewire. Now, of course, it doesn't happen usually daily. It may, and probably not even over the course of a week. Things can happen somewhat quickly, but it typically takes a few weeks. But it's amazing, right? You can change at the even individual neuron level how a particular circuit is firing and behaving dynamically. And that is just unbelievably amazing that you can go from the big concept of how do behaviors and ways that you're thinking about things at the highest level. And, we're not quite there, but we're starting to be able to drill down to the individual neuron cellular level and see what's responsible for these changes and how can you do it. And it really is just incredible how dynamic the brain is. I think it's one of the things that truly makes humans, right? I mean, every animal, every mammalian creature generally has a brain of some type, but the fact that our brains as humans have evolved to be so incredibly complex and dynamic and be able to respond and adapt over time is just endlessly interesting and amazing, and truly mind-blowing. I think when I really think about it, it gets pretty philosophical pretty quickly, but it's so incredibly interesting.
Yeah, the two neurons in my head are always battling each other.
Yeah, that's right. Good and bad neurons, and they're constantly fighting. And like, I want to fire more. No, I want to fire more. And you see who wins. Yeah, it is really a bit of a tug of war.
So, Alex, of course, right? Like this dovetails into what you do today. And I guess like when we talked before, you're very much leading what's coming out in terms of maybe drug development or where you're going. Like, where do you see that? And obviously, don't say anything that you're not allowed to, right? But what do you see coming in the future in terms of options for folks who have these neurodegenerative diseases?
Yeah, absolutely. I think historically, those that follow drug development and therapies for neuroscience, it's been tough. In the 60s and 70s and 80s, there was a heyday of psychiatry drugs, and still there is innovation in the psychiatry front. But for a long time, that was the extent of drug development in neuroscience. And then late in these thousands, then multiple sclerosis became more addressable as we learned about biology of the immune system and how to modulate CD20 cells, for example. And then spinal muscular atrophy, a super rare disease mostly affecting kids. I mean, adults can have it too, but it's especially devastating when it manifests in kids. And so now there are amazing therapies there. And now we're starting to be in this period where some of these bigger diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and Huntington's, each of which have symptomatic therapies available that can help a little bit with symptoms, but don't do anything at all to slow the inevitable progression of disease, right? It's basically you get the disease, and unfortunately, it's a systematic and progressive decline. In ALS, it can be unbelievably rapid, 3 to 5 years from symptom onset to death, which is just unbelievably devastating. Parkinson's and Alzheimer's a bit longer, but similarly devastating of the decline over time. Biology and our understanding of disease biology, and then the tools of which we have at our disposal to drug particular targets has just advanced immensely over the past 10, 15 years. And so, from my perspective, looking ahead, we're still not there, right? We still are just at the cusp in Alzheimer's disease. There's been some big failures in Parkinson's and Huntington's. But when you look ahead, there are things in the clinic today that are starting to really show promise of drugging the target that we want to, having some type of effect. And so, from my perspective, I am really excited for the next 10 or so years and hopefully beyond for these diseases that I think we're going to first start seeing things that can truly slow disease. Now, unfortunately, we won't stop disease yet, generally speaking, but we can significantly slow and prolong time in the earlier stages of the disease, which is significant, right? If you can really, in the early stages, keep someone there for much longer before it completely destroys the brain, and like Alzheimer's, right? We're all just intimately familiar with how devastating it is in later stages to no longer recognize family members or some of the dementia and psychosis symptoms that come out. So the ability to delay all of that is actually really exciting, and I think will be just really meaningful. And then hopefully over time, as we better understand genetics, there will be some opportunities to hopefully one day prevent disease onset, but that feels a bit further out. But I'm hoping in my career that one day we'll actually even be able to prevent onset of some of these diseases based on genetics.
I hope so too, because we're going to get old pretty soon.
That's very true. Not getting any younger.
That's
That's
right.
for sure.
Now, Alex, I'd love it if you could share a few pieces of advice that you've learned over your career that would help the fellow 2010s succeed in theirs.
Yeah, to me, it's a really good question. It's a really, really good question. And to me, there are three things that stand out to me. It's first, experiment. Second, be adaptable. And then third, be ready to catch the next wave. So I'll say each a little bit about each. So experiment, I think that experimentation is such an interesting part of life, and especially in the earlier stages, but it can be anytime, whether that's thinking about different leadership styles, whether that's thinking about how do I process information and react, whether it's even hobbies. There's so much room for experimentation. And for me, I've been on such a journey, both personally and professionally, figuring out what are the things I like, what are the things that I don't like, how am I at my best, when am I at my best, and then conversely, what are the things where I can be blocked and not at my best. And so it's been just a constant experimentation. I by no means think I've cracked it yet, but I think at least now feel better at understanding what some of those things are, and constantly tweaking with things, and constantly figuring out how to do things better, how to be better both professionally in the work environment, how to be a better husband, how to be a better father. And so it just is this experimentation journey that I have found just that mindset very helpful for me. The second thing is adaptable. It's similar to experimentation in some ways, but I actually think that, the world is just changing so much all the time. And when you look at the broader macro system, AI, and is that going to take all of our jobs? Maybe it's going to take my job, but there's so many things out there that if we continue doing the same things tomorrow that we did today, I'm not sure we'll be in a good place. Maybe tomorrow is not the right time scale, but sooner rather than later, things are going to change. And so I think you just have to adapt and be willing to adapt, willing to learn new things, willing to think about things in different ways. And so for me, I've constantly pushed myself to be ready to just change direction, change way of thinking, and learn how to be able to handle that quickly. And I think that's just unbelievably important. And then the third thing, be ready to catch the next wave. So to me, one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got was at McKinsey from a senior partner and early in my tenure. And this guy said, Alex, life is about catching waves. And I said, what does that mean? He said, in life, there'll probably be actually 2 or 3 big waves. You have no idea when they're going to come, or you'll likely have limited idea of when it's going to come, but it's going to be right there in your face. And if you don't catch it, and if you're not prepared to catch it, you're going to miss it. You're going to miss this opportunity, miss this sweet spot window to do something. And honestly, it may be 5-10 years. Who knows how long it will be to the next wave. And you're going to run out of waves pretty quickly. And I thought that was such a powerful thing for me I think I had earlier in my life thought about a career or thought about things in a somewhat linear step of I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that, then I'm going to do this. And it has to be in this defined progression. And I kind of learned that it's great to visualize things. It's great to think about things, but you have to be ready for a big change or something that might push you out of your comfort zone. And honestly, if you just don't know when that might happen. But if you miss it, I think that the chance of regretting and the impact it has to miss things can be harder. It can be the hardest thing. And so I've learned to just be ready for something to present itself, and just be ready to catch the wave and hopefully ride it somewhere good.
When you were at MIT, did you feel like you were the only one who didn't belong? Do you compare yourself with successful classmates? Do you feel like you're constantly needing to do more to feel like you're enough? Many of us feel that. I felt it too, but you don't have to feel that way anymore. You can get better results, achieve more, and feel more fulfilled doing it. I can say that because I've done it, and I coach my clients to do it too. I use scientifically proven methods, including internal family systems, values-based leadership, and habit-building techniques to transform your psychology and your life. These trusted strategies will get you results quickly, in some cases, even in our first session, and they'll last you for years. Now, my coach isn't just about learning. It's about taking action and creating results. Results that'll boost your confidence, unlock doors to opportunities you never thought possible, and equip you with strategies that only a select few ever master. But here's the thing, the longer you wait, the more opportunities slip by. Imagine what your life could look like just weeks from now. Having taken the first step, take action now. Go to robkalvarowski.com and book a complimentary call with me. Amazing. I love this advice. You know, it's funny, right? Is a non-insignificant amount of folks that I work with, they lose out on exactly what you said with experimentation for play and for fun. Because, and you know this because you're a neuroscientist, is literally it's good for us, for the brain, and we generate ideas where it increases our capability to innovate and think and all these things. And so I want to ask you, where do you bring fun into your life?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. Right now, the biggest source of free time is playing with my two kids, which is unbelievably fun in its own right. I guess at some point you can overdose a little bit on Disney movies or some of the aspects, but the seeing the world, especially through my son's eyes, who's now 2.5, and personality is really coming out, and preferences and communication style. Just seeing the world through his eyes is just such an unbelievably fascinating thing to watch from a neuroscience perspective, of watching the brain develop in real time. Especially, I think one of the funniest things about toddlers is they're so uninhibited, right? That it's just free to say whatever it is on their mind, even ranging from when our son no longer wants to talk to somebody, whether it's an adult or a friend, he just goes, bye, like, get out of here, basically. And like, I can't say that to somebody of, I'm done talking to you. I'm just like abruptly bye. And so it just is so funny to see the lack of inhibition and realize that from the brain, like, a lot of this is actually we're wiring our brain to inhibit ourselves, right? I mean, that is actually largely what we're doing. We have just such overactive brains, and overactive in a good way, but actually a lot of growing and developing is learning how to inhibit and control things. And so anyways, that to me has just been one of the, from a free time perspective, almost the basic neuroscience of how the brain watches, of, seeing it from my son's eyes. And then golf, those that know me, I'm a huge golfer now. I love being outdoors. I love the mental aspect of the game, of thinking about angles of attack, of thinking of different ways to play different shots, of balancing risk versus reward. Do I hit over the water because it's the shorter way home, or do I play it safe? And it kind of depends on my personality of the day, whether I'm feeling frisky and want to be really attack mode, or if I'm feeling super safe and playing the conservative route. So I really love that classic battle internally of the risk versus reward. And yeah, just like I said, being outside. Generally, golf courses are in beautiful places too. I mean, a lot of them are. So it's, whether it's playing alongside a course on the ocean or something like that, it's also just a great way to disconnect. I always keep my phone away when I golf so that nobody is texting or emailing or any of that, can just be really in the moment, which I think is really important, to learn how to be in the moment and not always connected. So that's the other thing that I try to do. It's a little bit less now with two kids. We'll see how much golf I get in 2025. It's probably going to be less than last year, but hopefully they'll get into it too as we go. And yeah.
Totally. I just want to echo, right, is with your son and him being 2.5, it's such, well, one is it's such an opportunity for you in terms of empathy, which is it's a great leadership strategy, but it's also that curiosity, and even those things like like saying bye, like basically setting a boundary, which I'm sure everybody listening needs to set one somewhere, right? And so of course you can't just your boss, you're just like bye, right? Like you can't always do it like as tight as that, but it teaches us these lessons that we can also learn and apply in our spaces.
Yeah, it's very true. That's very true. And I feel like part of it for me is, which I think is somewhat true to my son, of it's managing energy, right? If he has a certain amount of energy or a certain thing of deciding what makes me happy versus not. And when I can figure out a situation is no longer making me happy, can I now go do something that makes me happy? And I like that mentality of managing energy levels, and you have to be appropriate about it. Like you said, you can't be abrupt to your boss and say goodbye. Like I'm done with you. But figuring out how to balance doing things in your life of things that you enjoy doing and gives you energy, and minimize or at least place even more boundaries around things that take energy away, I think is, at least as a way that I have found quite helpful.
It absolutely is. That is the way people need to think about time management versus thinking about it as blocks of time. I mean, you can have those as well, right? But it's very much energy management versus what a lot of folks would call classic time management.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alex, of course, this show is about building our community and helping each other succeed. And so, how would you like to support our fellow 2010s in achieving their goals?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, healthcare more broadly is just such a complicated problem. There are things that we do well, even just being US focused for a moment, but plenty of things that we don't do well. And whether that's healthcare broadly or just even doubling down into the care for patients with neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Huntington's, we just do all of this so poorly, both from a treatment drug perspective as well as the overall care. And so we have such an amazing collection of smart, brilliant, talented people. And selfishly, anybody that's interested in and passionate about neurodegenerative diseases, whether it's on the drug side of things, which is my wheelhouse, or the broader care, would love to connect with anybody that's passionate about that, because there's just so much more that we can do. And it's just such a deeply complicated problem that it's literally impossible for one person or even a small group of people to solve. It requires a cross-disciplinary, different way of thinking mindset to get there. And then on the other side of things, I'm happy to help anybody, of course, but anybody that is thinking about drug development, or anybody that is thinking about an application, especially going from basic research and discovery in the lab, which is just such an important component of the innovation ecosystem, but thinking about what's the right path of getting it one day to patients at scale, right? Which is literally what we do in the pharmaceutical industry, is bring innovation at scale to patients, and all of the steps along the way. It's something I'm always happy and love and speak with. There's especially from my PhD, a large number of people that I talk to regularly, but I'd say less so from our MIT friends. So it's a great chance to be reconnected and rediscover all the amazingly fascinating things that people are doing, and welcome the chance to talk about any of that. Anybody that's just interested in innovation in the pharma industry generally, super excited to talk about.
Absolutely. I mean, you said it. It doesn't feel like 15 years, and yet it seems like everybody has an incredible story. Everyone's extremely accomplished. It's incredible. I mean, for me, I've met a bunch of you through the show, and I'm just excited to get back in person and experience it all over again.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? It's amazing, and it's amazing how in reconnecting and still staying close with some people, but just seeing and reflecting on just how much change has happened in the 15 years, and how just I feel like everyone was already so interesting in college, but we've all evolved and experienced different things and just done such amazing, interesting things. I've loved, in your podcast, I've loved listening to the ones done so far, and I'm so excited to see everybody in the reunion and hear all the really interesting things that everybody's.
Absolutely. Now, Alex, of course, we got to flip the script. And so, what's your biggest goal, and how can the fellow 2010 support you?
I think there's a professional goal and a personal goal. So I'll start with the personal goal first. I feel like a lot of us are starting to have kids, and balancing having multiple kids in some cases I have found personally the transition from 0 to 1 kid versus the transition to 1 and 2 kids to be so different. And actually, the 1 to 2 is exponentially harder than the 0 to 1 because it really is the time management and managing of energy and managing of the chaos is just so much more challenging. And so I'm incredibly excited and interested. I feel like there's first level some commiserating with fellow parents of just like the crazy stuff that toddlers especially do. I mean, it's crazy sometimes what they're up to and the fellow stories, and then the how do you manage certain transitions. I mean, potty training is. I mean, that's I guess a funny topic, but that in its own right is just such an experience. It's crazy. I feel like that's harder than any piece set that I ever did during my time at MIT. And then, on the professional side, I think in the next year, a real goal of mine is based in Boston area. Our company is headquartered in Cambridge. Cambridge is the ecosystem, like the hub of innovation in the world. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of talent and interesting ideas that are in the area. And I think as I learn and as I evolve, like the being connected and networked, actually that power gets even higher for me over time. And I feel like the more people I meet, the more I realize I don't know, like the more I don't know, and all of just the very interesting ideas and things that are happening. So a goal of mine this year, I feel like in the last year, especially even the year before, tended to be a bit more insular and focused on my immediate network and my immediate surroundings. And I'm really pushing myself to get out there and talk with more people because it's unbelievably amazing all of the interesting ideas and people that are out there, and then starting to connect people that otherwise didn't know each other. And I think that's what's just so powerful about our MIT network or the other network. We all belong to so many different networks, and it's amazing when you start crossing networks and introducing people and bouncing ideas off. And to me, that's where the magic really happens. It really is amazing seeing people come together in that way. And so that's, to me, because I am introverted as a person. It may not come out at times because I can fake being an extrovert at times, but the natural inclination sometimes is to be a bit more insular. And so, yeah, so that's really pushing myself to kind of get out there a bit more. And yeah, excited for the year ahead.
Absolutely. I mean, what you mentioned about connecting folks, I do a lot of it and I love doing it for people. And so obviously anyone out there, let me know. And Alex will chat a little bit about who we can connect you with, because this discussion has spurred a few in my mind. So we'll definitely do that too. Now, of course, Alex, you've touched on it a little bit, but let's talk about the last question we have for you. How would you like to impact the world?
Yeah, so it comes back to neurodegenerative diseases. I mean, that is truly my passion. Every time I think about Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and Huntington's and ALS, it is just such an immense burden for patients and their families. And so to me, what I hope is that when I look back on my career in my 60s or 70s, and now I'm in Florida playing golf, whatever it is, with the grandkids carrying the golf bag, they're probably actually kicking my ass is what's really going to happen. But when that happens, what I want to think about back on professionally is that I helped create and crack at least one of these diseases. Now, it's such a team sport, right? It's impossible for one person. That's actually one of the reasons why I love the pharmaceutical industry, is that it truly is the ultimate team sport, because there's so much expertise across so many different areas that are required to successfully develop a drug and ultimately bring it to patients. I mean, it's just unbelievable the amount of people and smart, dedicated people that are involved. And so I hope to look back one day and say I contributed in some small part to really innovative treatments that made a meaningful difference for patients suffering from at least one of these diseases. I hope it's all of them. I hope all four of those that I work on have something available. But of course, just being realistic, they're all very difficult. And so if at least one of them has something that's truly meaningful, I'll have felt immensely fulfilled.
Amazing. Folks out there, so I've dropped Alex's LinkedIn in the podcast notes. You, of course, feel free to connect with him there and reach out. I mean, in terms of Novartis, just novartis.com. But you remember the building that's right at the back near Stata Center. So it's there. Of course, yeah, Alex, it's been incredible to chat with you. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thanks, Rob. Immense pleasure. Great talking with you.
Everyone out there, thank you so much for listening. Of course, if you want to join this show and share your story, just send me an email, rob@robkalvarowski.com. And then for everything, executive coaching, speaking, workshops, the whole bit, robkalvarowski.com. Thank you so much. And we'll see you all next week.